Hi, my name is Joe Jackson. I'm a journalist, author, interviewer, and broadcaster who's interviewed roughly 1,400 celebrities over a 30-year period for nearly all major media outlets in Ireland and many abroad. And here let me say yes. There were many moments during interviews when I nearly said aloud, Good God, can this really be happening? Maybe I would have, had it not been uncool to do so. But there sure were times when I was sitting, say, with someone whose music or writing or movies had been central to my life when I wanted to say such a thing. That certainly nearly happened in 1995 when I was on a movie set interviewing Dennis Hopper. I am of that generation who first encountered the man in the culture shuddering movie Easy Rider in 1969. It even made me throw away my watch, which I must try and recover one of these days. More seriously, I also was hugely influenced, as many a misfit was, by a similarly seminal movie from earlier in Hopper's career, namely Rebel Without a Cause, starring, of course, James Dean. So, what follows in this part of my series of short podcasts, which I call singles because they usually last less than 5 minutes, is the point of the interview at which Hopper and I discussed that movie and James Dean, and had a joint. I'm joking. Maybe. By the way, if you want to read the article I wrote out of this chat with Dennis Hopper, check out my website, joejacksoninterviewer.com. Either way, enjoy.
Well, my first workings were with
Nick Ray.
Nick Ray and George Stevens, both within a year's time. Very different, but
Absolutely.
very,
Directors.
George Stevens was one of our greatest directors.
Right.
And Nick Ray was certainly prime. You know, I mean, he was like, he was a very valid guy. And to see the difference of that between one movie to the next
Right.
was an amazing world. I mean, at the time I did Giant was the most expensive movie that ever been made.
Okay.
And Rebel Without a Cause was just sort of a little
Small.
cheapy picture.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah. Do you look at any of the? I read a recent study of Rebel, which said that despite its claims to be the first rock and roll movie in that sense, in terms of attitude and striking against the establishment, that if you look at it again, it really is very conservative. That at the end, it kind of serves the state. He goes back to the family, the mother and father take him back, and that at the end, it's kind of subverted to a degree. And that it's not true. Maybe what was the guy? Some guy wrote a psychological report. John Linder or Robert Linder wrote the original. Where it was supposed to be a psychotic, and he was supposed to be a disobeyer of every code. So is that where kind of Hollywood moves in to neutralize subversion? You know what I mean? Even way back then. And it does end up with the daddy's jacket going around the boy and everything. They walk off into the sunset.
Yeah.
That
was the period of time when they were still trying to make morals. They were like trying to make morals for a society. Right. I mean, like they had their moral code.
Yeah, right.
But you only do this in movies and that in movies. I remember when I went into contract with Warner Brothers, the big, when I was 18 years old to do Rebel Without a Cause and Giant, the big sign outside said, "Welcome to Warner Brothers. Welcome to Burbank, home of Warner Brothers, combining good citizenship with good picture making."
All right. Okay.
Now this was prevalent everywhere. This was after the McCarthy hearing, and now it's a rosy American. It's picket fences. It's in little white houses with picket fences, and this is, it's the 50s.
Okay.
And it's Eisenhower, and it's like, come on now, get it, you're straight, good, blah, 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 blah.
But did Nick Ray have to go along with that, or would he have had, like I have read that there were certain words had to be dropped from the script, like punk, because it could have suggested that Plato and Dean were having a homosexual fling? That this kind of impositions were really like the state saying you can,
probably,
you know what I mean?
What's his name wrote?
This guy, not that guy recently, that book recently.
The guy who wrote Hollywood Babylon.
Oh, Kenneth Anger.
I mean, come on, man.
I'm not buying his book.
Crazy.
No, not buying his book.
No,
that's not. It wasn't him.
James Dean, the human ashtray.
That's the line. That's the line.
Break.
Yeah, I know.
No,
the more recent book
also,
was...
just while we're talking about this, okay? Every biographer of James Dean has been a homosexual.
Like Paul Alexander, the latest one I read.
Is he a homosexual also?
Yeah, he called you a fraud.
Oh, did he?
Yeah.
Okay, good.
Right.
Well, excellent, because that's easy. I'm so tired of hearing about James Dean being a homosexual. I mean, like, James Dean been a homosexual. He'd been doing it in the middle of the street, When the whole year that I saw him, he was madly in love with two women. One was Ursula Andress, and the other was Pierre Angeli.
Right.
And he was obsessed by them. And he had a lot of gay friends, and who doesn't have gay friends in this business?
Right.
But, I mean, it was like, and it's
Did you read this Paul Alexander book?
No,
You got to read it just to throw it out the window. Because he just says at that time he was really in love with Jack Simmons, and that's who Sal Mineo was based on.
Can I tell you something? Jack Simmons.
I'm just reporting what I
Jack
read.
Simmons is sort of wonderful little faggot. He was very funny. The idea of having sex with Jack Simmons is like. It's like, I mean, it's so, I mean, I don't even know where to begin to tell you. I mean, if he was going to, believe me, that would not be the place. It would not be the place. He was funny. He was delightful. He was like a funny little guy who was like,
well, you see, what this
was
guy
really feminine and really, really like.
Not his kind of man. Well, they're saying that Plato, Mineo is based on Jack.
Mineo was homosexual.
Oh, we know. Yeah, he said that.
But not at that time.
All right, so it was too
You
early.
got to understand, he's in school with Natalie Wood. Nobody gets the dimensions of any of this.
All right.
The picture of any of this.
All right.
I mean, Natalie Wood is 14 years old, for God's sake. Sal Mineo is like 15 or something. They're in school all day. They're not even hanging out on the set.
All right.
So, like, you know,
yes,
Natalie was very active. But Sal Mineo didn't know whether he was gay or anything. He didn't know anything. I mean, he was like a very young guy.
Well, he did say when he looked at the movie in '78, you know, its 25th anniversary or something, that he sees it as a kind of secret love story between himself and Dean. And maybe that's his fantasy.
Who says that?
Mineo.
Mineo's dead.
No, he said that in '78 at the 25th anniversary of it, right?
That's because he.
That's because he wanted to. No, is that true though that most of the biographies of Dean have upped that ante because that's where they're coming from?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah,
absolutely.
They want to reappropriate.
The guy that wrote the first one was the guy that was in at UCLA with Jimmy.
All right.
You know, he was gay. He came on the set.
Do you think it's such a big issue if he was or wasn't though?
Well, why make somebody something that they weren't?
Okay.
Why push your trip on somebody when that wasn't their trip?
Right.
I mean, if Jimmy ever did something, he may have turned a couple of tricks in New York when he was a starving actor or something. I don't know about that.
Well, that's what Alexander claims that.
But I don't know. But you know, how does he know that either? If I don't know it.
Well, I'll tell you what's sick
that's
about
what they keep talking about.
What's sick about the book is he quotes verbatim conversations Dean had with lovers in small bedrooms where obviously nobody else could be there. So you really have to, as you say, to set it in the context of its time. It reads as bullshit, but a lot of people are buying this. You know, and as I say, they're looking at your movie again. Maybe they're saying you were looking across the screen there, Adam, too, saying I fancy a bit of that.
Well, yeah, that I was. I was looking at him, wishing I was as fucking good an actor as he was.
Okay. Well, yeah, well, that is the more serious level. How deeply did the Brando Dean perception of acting and living, maybe the whole lifestyle, shape you at that very impressionable age?
Well, no, I was like totally like James Montgomery. The same thing happened to me that happened to Dean. Dean was a little older than me. Right. I mean, I saw Brando act and I saw Montgomery Clift act, and that's what I wanted to do. You know?
Why
the
then?
kind of acting I wanted
what was
to
their
do.
dynamic that was so different from Garfield or from the other guys? Well, Garfield was a bit like Clift. But what was so different?
They weren't as real.
All right.
They weren't as good. They just weren't as good in actors. They weren't as believable.
All right.
And
that fired you.
Huh?
That's what fired you, seeing Brando and Montgomery.
Well, I was already doing Shakespeare. My idols at that time were Orson Welles and John Barrymore, and these very broad, big, kind of actors.
What, the Shakespearean acting, that kind of projection and all that.
Yeah. And so when I was 13, I saw in 1 week Marlon Brando in Viva Zapata, Zapata, and I saw Clift in Place in the Sun.
All right. And that was it.
Then I saw Streetcar. And it took me a long time before I saw The Men.
Right.
But and then Dean's had the same idols.
Yeah, Clift
and Brando.
Yeah.
Hi, Joe Jackson here again. I thank you for listening to this edition of the Joe Jackson Interviews podcast. And don't forget, if you want to read my print interview with Dennis Hopper or any of my articles, check out my website, joejacksoninterviewer.com.